American in lifestyle, global in spirit, Indian at heart. You're listening to Desi Tea Talks.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Desi Tea Talks. I am your host Ashwarya, and with me we have Manasi and Parija joining us for another fun episode of Desi Tea Talks. So for this episode, we decided to do some trash talking about our siblings. No, we're going to talk about the two sisters me and Manasi grew up with, and Parija and her experiences, how it was being a single child. Manasi, how was it growing up with an elder sister?
It was a very love-hate relationship. Let me just say that. It's the best of both worlds and the worst of both worlds. It's so interesting. Like when we were really young, we actually weren't close. We were siblings, so that relationship was always there. But it definitely changed as we grew older. And I think we grew closer as we grew older. I think when I was younger, I was more of a child, and she was always that older sister that I wanted to please and get into the group because all the cousins that she hung out with and her friends were older. And I want to hang out with you. I want to hang out with you. And they all just looked at me like, oh my gosh, this child. And I was always that child because I was one of the youngest siblings amongst all my cousins. So it was just me and another cousin that were always left by ourselves, and all these older cousins always hung out together. And so I felt like, oh my gosh, I have to please them so they would include me in their group. So obviously they didn't want to include me because, they were older and they had whatever they were doing. And it was just so funny. So I was always like starstruck by them and my sister. I was always starstruck. She was the cool kid and I was the nerdy kid, always, all through our childhood. And then obviously later on, that relationship changed drastically where we're like now best of friends and she's always there for me. But that's in the nutshell what our relationship was growing up and now. What about you, Aisha?
I was the older sister. So being the older sister, I'll be honest, I hated the day she came. Like I hated my sister when she was born. I would go and complain to my neighbors that, oh, there is some new person in my house and everybody just loves her. I was bad. I couldn't adjust to the first few days of she being there. But I think when it actually hit me that this is like my sibling, she's my sister and we share the same bloodline, it kind of, you start growing that relation. But still, that being said, she was always a pain. I pain beep. My mom was a working woman, right? So I think a lot of responsibility came on me taking care of my younger sister. So the relationship has always been about the fact that, oh, I'm the one who bosses her around. That's what she felt. And she would always say that, one day, as a kid, she would always tell me, one day I'll grow elder than you and then I'm going to boss around you. So that's how our childhood was. It was always about me bossing her around, taking care of her, teaching her homeworks and everything. In fact, dance lessons. So I think her first few dance performances, I choreographed all of those. So those are very special things we did, but still it was always about, I'm the strict one. But yeah, today I think it's inseparable, right? You share that connect. There are times when my sister will just call me because she knows probably something is going wrong with me. So the relationship has become from what it was like a little sibling rivalry to, okay, we are the two people we have for each other throughout the life, right? So it strikes you as you grow older that when you're outside of your parents, that's the only thing that is yours. You have a husband, but you don't share the blood. Like blood is always thicker than water, right? So that's the thing. So I think that's where we both have now converged. But I think I actually want to ask Parija, you never got to share your room with anyone, right?
No.
How was
You
that
would
like?
think that a life of a single child is all like unicorn and rainbows. I was the first kid of the family on both sides, my mom's and my dad's. And the second kid was, I think, 6 years after me. So being a single child, and like you can imagine that I got so much attention as a kid. And even to this day, I still get it. But I get attention now from my younger siblings and the rest of the elder people of the family. Life as a single child, it was amazing. I mean, there was not even a moment that I miss having a sibling, only because all my cousins are very, very close to me. Like they're as good as my own siblings. So there was no, and I don't have like one cousin. I have like 35 plus cousins. So I share my life with 35 cousins just like I would with another sibling if I had. But in childhood, like as a single child, I mean, life is all unicorns and rainbows, but that is not the case in adulthood. And there are obviously different pros and cons to, like being the only child versus having a sibling. So I'll get just a little bit into it, is that single child was fun as a kid, when mom is doing play dates and things like that. But in adulthood, when you hit the marriage part and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm like the only one for my parents, even to call on Mother's Day or Father's Day, I'm the only one calling. They don't have anybody else to call. It does sound sad, but at the same time, that is the truth. So the best part of childhood, of being a single child, sometimes also kind of gets the worst part of the adulthood. But no complaints. I love being the only child. I get all the attention. I do not have to share anything with anybody. I have both my parents to myself, and the relationship with the parents, on an individual basis is just so special. I mean, it's like, I'm sure all of us are like best friends to our parents, but sharing that as a single child is very unique and special to me.
And it's not competitive for you, right? Like,
No.
It's so funny you mentioned that you're like best friends with your parents and you have that relationship with them. I actually share that relationship with my sister more than I do with my parents. Obviously, they're my parents and we're close. But my sister was always and has been and is always my first go-to, no matter what it is, even if it's like something more serious that I know that my parents will only know or can help me with. I always go to my sister first. I think it's a very mutual relationship, and that has developed over the years. I'm telling you, as I mentioned, it was not like that when we were younger, for sure. And it's funny, as a child, Aisha mentioned that, you were the boss, and, I had the same thing, but I was told that when I was born, maybe that wasn't my sister's first reaction, but she was actually way too protective of me when I was a baby. Apparently, she would keep me, or she would want to keep me all to herself. She would not let like aunts and uncles touch me or carry me. And, she was a tiny little person herself, but she used to try. I was like a chubby child. She used to try and carry me everywhere. Like, we have photos of it. And my parents always were like, she was so protective of you. And it was so funny because I heard those stories growing up. And as a child, I was like, well, she was so nice to me before. But when I was a child, she was kind of like, and I thought she was like so mean to me because she never included me in anything. So I was like, what happened? So I always wanted to be back to that relationship. And I'm so glad we got to that. And it just happened, we were like, as younger siblings, oh my gosh, I still remember fights where we used to pull each other's hair. Like, we used to beat each other up. You think boys fight? You should hear my parents talk about how we fought. Literally scratches and punches and slaps and pulling hairs. And being the bigger child, obviously she had the advantage over me. But I think I was pretty feisty and I got my punches in too. But we were like a typical sibling relationship, boys, girls. I don't think it matters. We had that and we grew out of it. And my parents both were working and my grandma was there, but honestly, like, I feel like my sister had a big role in raising me. Like, she's like a second mother to me. I always tell her that. And I think Aishwarya has that older sister perspective. I'm sure she understands what I mean when I say that, right?
yeah, I mean, you guys tell me how protective I am of my sister, right? So that comes from the same motherly instinct I have because, growing up, I was the person taking care of her. So after having learned the fact that, she is here to stay after she grew up, I was very protective of her. And I think a lot of her her childhood actually has a lot to do with how I raised her. I tell my mom, her initial homeworks and a lot of things I taught her because, I was the elder child. I was helping her with all these things. And funny story, Shreya always was, my sister's name is Shreya. So, like an elder sister, you suddenly become like, oh, I'm the elder child of the house. A lot of responsibility on me. So whenever we are going in the auto rickshaw and stuff, so 3 people can sit, right? Shreya is the only person who has to sit on the lap. Till date, I think till when I was her age, I always used to get my own seat, but she always had to sit on the lap because she was like the younger one. So things like these relationships always evolve from how it started. The fights they are bad. I think my mom still tells me, if she comes and she feels 2 people are not talking, she could sense it that we had a bad day. But she knew when not to ask us what happened, because then she has to make a judgment and tell who was right and who was wrong. So I think parents never interfered in
Yeah.
any of those.
I agree with that. And it's interesting you mentioned that, your motherly instinct. I think you can tell that you're the older child because I feel like you're motherly towards me and Prasia too. You act like even though you're not the oldest amongst the three of us, you act like you are. You're so protective of us too. It definitely shows in personality that you're the older sister.
Girls, I have one question for you. Every child is their parent's favorite. So, Manasi and Aisha, did you girls feel that way, that, oh, you're your dad's favorite and your sister is your mom's favorite or something like that?
I still am.
Honestly, growing up, I really thought that I was an adopted child. You know why? Because my sister told me that. So there's a saying in Marathi, and I won't say it in Marathi, but what it literally translates to is they exchanged me for a piece of bread. And so she used to tell me that growing up all the time. Oh, you're adopted, right? They just exchange you for a piece of bread and nobody really wants you here. And I used to like cry for hours, and my parents used to console me, no, she's just playing with you. And she used to get a lot of trouble for it. But she did that to me so often. So all through my childhood, I thought that my sister was the favorite child. I don't know what it was. I don't think that's true at all. I do think I got a lot. I don't know. My sister disagrees, right? She thinks that I'm the favorite child, and I obviously think she's the favorite child. So I feel like she thinks like I got the best of it because I was the younger child, and I didn't have to, like, my parents weren't as strict with me because I don't know what it was. I think she had broken all the rules already and she had already done it all. So they didn't expect much from me, or if it was that, I don't know what it was. She definitely thought that they didn't enforce as many rules on me, or so she always thought that, oh, they favor you. That's why they did it. So all through my childhood, we had that fight about who's the favorite and who's not. I don't think there is such a thing for parents. We should ask our parents that maybe, and like put them on the spot. Who's your favorite? This is your day to tell. But
I agree with
like,
your elder sister.
I definitely had my insecurities growing up that, oh my gosh, they're going to abandon me someday. Like every time we went somewhere, I used to like, please don't leave me in a fair or something. I definitely had that insecurity.
No, I agree with your sister. Come on, like the younger one always gets it their way. I was married at the age of 25. My sister is 27, and she has she's still chilling out. So it's always I think first child is the experiment that our parents are learning, and all the rules and regulations are only for the first one. And then by the time the second one comes, they're like, oh, it's okay.
Well, either way, I loved it because I mean, some of it is true. I think they were maybe stricter with her, and it was also like evolving times,
Yeah.
right? By the time I was a teenager, it was a little bit better. So they did let me do a lot of things that they didn't let her do. But it was either way, I loved it because I'm like, I could get away with a lot of things like this. I mean, I have gotten away with a lot of things. Funny story. And my sister played a big part. This is the relationship we had, and when we were both finally like around the same age group. She had graduated and I was in college, and we were still in India at this time. Obviously we had, oh my gosh, I really hope my parents aren't listening to this, but I had, for whatever reason, by the time I'd gotten to college, I had more lenient hours of coming and going. So I showed up pretty late one night, and I showed up plastered. And so my friend was dropping me home, and my parents were luckily asleep. And so my friend was also friends with my sister. He texted my sister, listen, she's drunk. You need to get her in somehow without your parents knowing. And so they sneaked me in somehow. And my parents, their room was actually further away from the door. And luckily, my grandma didn't notice either. So she got me in. And me and my sister obviously shared a bedroom. And my bathroom was outside. Our bathroom was outside our bedroom. So I had to obviously throw up once I got in, I had to throw up a few times. And my sister was like, she used to like open the door, make sure my dad, look down the hallway, the coast is clear, parents aren't there. Okay, go now. And like, she fed me bread and water, and this has happened a few times. And my parents, to this date, well, now they know, hello, mom and dad, now you know. But this happened a few times and she's covered for me. And I've done the same for her too. But she didn't get to live that life until much later, until I was older enough to cover up for her. But she did that a lot for me. So I'm eternally grateful for that. And I think the biggest reason she got into so much trouble was because I wasn't old enough to cover up for her. So I think she got caught more often than I did.
I think you were the one who would go complain to, right? Younger sisters always do that. Yeah, she did that.
When I didn't know it any better, I was like, yeah, she can't play. Yeah, she did this, she did that. I totally did that.
Oh, my cousins, like when they're adults now, but when they were young, they've gotten me into so much trouble just by like, I mean, I would barely see them like once in 2 months and I would always end up in trouble. So I was like, sometimes I would be like, thank God I don't have a sibling that is staying with me or sharing. And so in my mind, I always thought that siblings would always get you in trouble all the time. I don't know what it is. And
But they also get you out of trouble, I promise you.
I believe you. Yes, I believe you. So in schools and stuff, everyone used to be like, oh, how does it feel to be like a single child? Or, how do you like this attention, celebrity kind of life? And I'm like, it's not that. It's not, I mean, yes, you do grow up. Like, I feel like single childs always are become an adult a little bit quicker just because you're always with your parents, they're always like checking your stuff, you're always a part of their conversation and things like that. But finding the sibling relationships and stuff, I really learned that being a single child, that you end up valuing your friends a lot more. And it comes from like it's a not very quantity friendship, it kind of comes down to quality friendship. So I've noticed this change in me from childhood to adulthood now, that year by year I kind of get very possessive about my friends and very picky. And this is so it's kind of strange to me because I feel like I just open up my life to them and they are kind of like my siblings. So whatever I would share with my siblings is what I share with my friends.
So you've built your little community of things.
Yeah.
But I think, Parita, a lot has to also come from the fact that you played tennis early on in your life, and so you are not uncomfortable sharing your bed, your room with a lot of people. And I think early on when you and I would have sleepovers, I've never felt that, you grew up as a single child, because a lot of people find that uncomfortable, the first adjustment when they have to even sleep with another person in the room. I think a lot has to also do with your playing days.
Absolutely. And I think also after marriage, the very silly thing, like I was the only one who called my dad like mommy and papa, right? Nobody else. So my husband after the marriage started calling my parents mommy, papa. And I'm like, how dare you call my parents mommy, papa? Like, they're mine. And then he's like, no, they're mine too now. I'm like, I'm not comfortable sharing this thing with you. So he's like, oh, you wouldn't know. Me and Chitwan had to do it all the time. And I'm like, that's different. It's like, so I'm sharing my parents like 25 years later in my life. It's strange. I still find it very hard, but
yeah, that I can imagine that. And it's funny you say like you have your friends that are like your siblings, you make or you find friends that are kind of like your siblings. I feel like, I mean, obviously we have our set of friends and we share that. But having a sibling honestly helped. I mean, I never needed friends. I had friends and I loved them and I still do, but she like, my sister was it for me. Like we hung out with each other. Once we grew comfortable with each other, we didn't really need, like even at, at get-togethers at family, but we were okay because we would just hang out by ourselves and, we were comfortable like that. So that's an advantage of having a sibling, is you have somebody to play with and share your things with, and that's kind of fun too.
I think for me, it has to be like, you have that one person to bitch about your parents.
Yes.
That's one thing you all share mutually. So as me and my sister have the same set of parents, so we can any day do trash talking whenever we want together. But actually, I have a question for you, Manasi. So how is it true that when elder sisters give you the clothes that they like and they still give you because they outgrow them, younger sisters don't really want to take it, but elder sisters kind of force it on them?
No, you know what though? My sister, like growing up, so we were pretty similar in sizes once we got to a certain age. She refused to share her clothes with me. So she used to like, if she found, so I used to like sneak her clothes and like just wear it and like make sure that I was back home before she could see me and things like that. But if she found out that I was wearing her clothes, she would be so mad. And then my parents had to intervene. Like, it was a big thing. That was the one thing she was just not okay with. Because especially growing up, you have so much pressure about dressing a certain way and not having repeat clothes and all this stuff, especially in college. So I think she was very afraid that somebody else is going to see it. And, once I grew older, I realized why she was afraid about it. But later on, honestly, again, when we grew comfortable with each other, we loved it because because our parents still bought us the same amount of clothes, but now we got to share our clothes. We actually openly traded in, okay, you're going to this thing, you can wear it. We just made sure not to wear the same clothes to the same occasion. But once we got there, we actually loved sharing clothes.
And now, yeah, I think it's same with us. Like we started sharing our clothes like happily at a certain point of our lives, but early on it used to be like if she was even given something that I was using, so she wouldn't want to wear it. Oh, my sister wore it, I don't want to use it. But then came a point she always wanted to wear my clothes. So it's, I think it's hormones or a lot of stuff. I don't know what's going on when you're a teenager. There are so many swings in these relationships. But what we have come down to is my sister still sneaks my clothes and takes it, and she'll always tell me when she's back in India. So I think she was with us, and then she went there. She wore one of my tops and my earrings. She's like, I got them. So she still does that to me. But this is nice now. Now it's fun. But
now you don't mind it as much. It's fine.
No. Now I sneak it. I get best of her stuff out.
Aisha, I like sharing clothes with you too.
I know. I think we both should actually start a renewable fashion series, because we have pictures wearing the same stuff at almost the same location but different timings.
Different timings, yeah.
But I have a question for you girls, and we have sisters. Manasi, you also have a sister, and Parita, you also had cousins. How is it sharing a room with a boy after, sharing a room with a girl all through the life? And it's more for Manasi, but I want both of your opinion because, even you've gone through these emotions.
So luckily, with me and my husband's actually really clean and organized. Relatively speaking, let's just leave it at that, because I'm actually on the extreme where I'm a little OCD about organization and cleanliness. So I mean, I couldn't complain because I like coming to US, and also we've seen other boys live. I've seen my friends live the way they live, because we used to go to each other's apartments all the time. So I've seen several boys live, and it was honestly disgusting. So compared to that, when me and Harshu we finally moved in, it was a piece of cake, because he was actually relatively pretty clean, because I was expecting the worst, and it turned out to be pretty decent. So honestly, I didn't mind it, and he actually understands my OCD, and he knows I'll freak out, so he's very careful about keeping it clean and keeping it organized. So for me, it wasn't a drastic change. I didn't really notice that huge transition, because I've always lived with roommates or girls, or in a community with people, so it wasn't that bad for me. What about you?
Oh, wait, I was always in a girl's house, right? By the end of it, my dad also started calling tops and he stopped calling it a shirt. He's like, yeah, it's my top. So I think coming from that and having a boy around was very odd in the first place. Like, you're sharing a bathroom with a guy, and guys have gadgets. Like, I didn't know all that stuff. So it was so unusual. The size of their clothes are so big. Like, how do you, there's just so much adjustment I had to make. My laundry basket is like little teeny tiny, and his is like this big one with 5 clothes. So those were the things that were new to me, and that was an adjustment. And I was always in that girl's, I was so comfortable having a sister, and suddenly I have to live with a boy. That was different. But Parita, how was it living with a new person after, always having the room by yourself?
It was a big change. Because even when I would travel for tournaments, I had the whole room to myself. When I was in college, I never shared a room with anybody. But after marriage, it's like sharing, and we moved into a 1-bedroom apartment. I was like, there is no way to escape anywhere. It was really hard. My dad is kind of a messy person too, and so is my husband. He's neat. He's like clean, but he's messy. So in that ways, it was okay, but just that every time going into the room and seeing clothes all over the place, and then to make their bed and make this and make that, it was a big change. It took me about 2.5 years to kind of get used to that.
Yeah. How has this sibling relationship changed over the course of years, especially after being married? Is it different or it's the same?
So obviously my sister got married before I did, and I was already in America when she did get married. And it was honestly an adjustment before, because talk about sharing your parents. For me, was sharing my sister that was the hardest for me, because I had all her I could call her in the middle of the night, any time of day, whatever, even if it was, the time zone change and stuff, she would always answer, and, we would be there for each other. the after marriage, giving them, for me, to give them the privacy, it was hard for me to realize, no, I can't call her at 1 a.m. in the morning anymore. There's, she has a husband. And so for me, that was really, really hard to get accustomed to it. But eventually, obviously I had to. And so I don't think she had a big change, because I feel like I got married much later. And so she had that same comfort level.
Now she has a baby too, so you're sharing it for 3 people.
Well, honestly, but that's a joy you will only experience once you're an aunt. Like, I tell my sister, like, when my sister told me first that she was pregnant, I like dropped everything. I still remember that day when she told me she was pregnant. It was such a big deal for me, because me and my sister always talked about, oh, I want you to have a baby because I want it to be an aunt. I don't know. So, it's just like that one thing that it's not your own, but it's almost as good as yours. And that's exactly how I feel. Like, I still to this day remember exactly what I was doing, how I felt. I was super, super happy. And I even went for the birth of my nephew back to India, and like, he is as good as my child. Like, not he's like my child. Like, it being an aunt, being a sister, we call it Masi. So the sister's child would call you Masi. So that relationship, honestly, you cannot, like, I hope to develop that relationship with my nephew. And unfortunately, we live on 2 separate continents. He's like my baby. Like, and I don't know how, but even my husband feels that about him. We talk to him like video calls all the time. And like, this is so sad, but my nephew wants to talk to my husband more than he wants to talk to me, which I am so jealous of. That's another jealousy. But that's the best feeling in the world. And I am not surprised that your sister is always nagging you to have a baby, Aisha.
Oh, yeah.
I totally get it, where she's coming from.
She wants to be the cool aunt who comes to the rescue. She says, it's so horrible to live with you. Your kid will need me. I'm the rescue person. For her, it's like, I will not have the responsibility of raising. I'm not here to make her responsible, make the child responsible, but I'm to do all the fun and spoil them. So she's like, your kid will.
That's how I feel. I'm always telling my sister, don't yell at him, don't tell him this. And she's like, yeah, you live with him 24/7. I was like, well, I mean, I'm not there, so I can tell whatever I want.
No, she always asks me to. I think I get a lot of pressure from my parents, and then I get a whole lot of pressure from my sister, because she wants that, let's do this. This is very cool and this and that. But I think it's hard. I think my sister also went through a very similar phase when I got married, because she was adjusting to my husband. She was adjusting to the fact that, we have our routine and things going on. Now she has learned the fact that, okay, it's Friday night, it's Saturday night. She knows when to call and when not to call. And she gets the sign that, okay, now is not the good time. But I think back in the day, it was kind of a new adjustment. And we were just growing up with all this new stuff. So I don't know how she felt, but yeah, I was feeling bad that I was having to, split my time with my husband and my sister. So there's so much new attention in life. So I feel that, but I think after getting married, I have become this person who wants her to enter this phase. I think I have a whole lot of stuff going on with my sister, but I am nagging her to get into the whole marriage phase when she is not ready. So yeah, I'm one of those people, finding a match for anyone. So anybody who has anything, please reach out to me. I'm definitely open. That's what I keep doing as an elder sister.
This is not Shaadi.com, Aisha.
I actually, so that's what happened. I actually put up her profile without her consent. I put up her profile and I said, I'll do all the work. And then was the time when I had to actually tell her. It didn't end very well. We had a full-on fight. And that's when I hate the fact that my sister sometimes calls my husband before she calls me in certain things. There are times when, she's sometimes more comfortable talking to her Jizu, and like, okay. But that's also a new adjustment I am making, that, okay, my sister can actually also have another sibling, because that's what she sees in my husband. That's like a brother she never had. So sometimes I'm like, okay, this is like a lot of competition.
My cousins feel the same way, the relationship with me and my cousins changed so much after the marriage. I mean, all my younger cousins, they always look up to me a lot. And now they had another person to look up to. And 5 years into this new relationships, they are more closer to my husband than I am. I mean, they spend hours talking to him, and every week he speaks to somebody. And it's not like a hi, hello, or a happy birthday occasional call. It's like a full-on conversation where my husband now updates me about my cousin's life. So
The
So
worst is when they're giving advices. Like, how do you give suggestions and recommendations to my cousins and my siblings?
right? It's really nice to see that relation develop, how he kind of keeps the entire family together and all the cousins, we all have I'm sure all of you have this group chats and things like that. And it's funny that my husband is the only one who's talking there the most with them, and they absolutely love it. And now it's gotten to a point where, oh, tell Didi to call me sometimes, once in a while. And I'm like, they make me sound like a terrible cousin, but it's nice to see how this whole relationship has evolved.
That I totally agree with that. Like, I think my husband does a better job of keeping in touch with everybody. And I feel like I'm the terrible person. Like I said, like my sister and my nephew want to talk to my husband before they want to talk to me now. So super jealous of that.
Oh, so Parita, I have a very personal question. You grew up as a single child. When you plan to have a family, do you want to have like 2 kids or 1 kid?
I think it will be one.
Do you want this? Okay.
Yeah, I do want the life that I had for my kid too. And it was really, the only reason I would like that is because just the bond that you share with your parents and the relationships that you make, like they're very limited relationships, but they're like, that's it. That's all you need in life. And I feel super content. But I don't know what my husband would say. I think he would probably say 2 because he had a younger brother himself. So we always keep arguing about this thing, but I think it will be 1.
What about you, Manasi?
If I have a kid, it'll be 1 kid.
You, Aisha?
I haven't thought about it. I wanted opinions.
I don't think you can, like,
Yeah.
I know we talked about this in another episode and we're planners and we're planning it and doing it our way. But things change once, I've heard it so much and I've read about it so much. Once you become a mother, once that hormonal changes happen, you don't know what you're going to do. So you may say now you want to have 1, but you may change your mind. But if you have traumatizing pregnancy, then you may stop at 1. So you never know. So I'm just saying, like, just go with it. Once you decide to have it, just go with it.
My sister says, you know what, the best would be you should all have twins. I mean, like, it's all done.
I don't like
A lot
that
of
idea at
people
all.
say that, a lot of people say that, like, just if you plan to have 2 kids, like, hopefully you have the twins. So it's like done. And if it's a boy and a girl, it's even perfect.
Yeah, it's
I kind of disagree with that. That's not how I think it, but
if I ever want to have 2, I would always, because I always had the sister relationship. I would always want to see those 2 sister things. Maybe that's the route I want to take. But I don't know. I haven't talked about this.
I don't think you can control that.
All right, ladies, I think we had a fun conversation, single child, siblings, sisters, trash talking, whatnot. And I think we can do a part 2. You can bring in our sisters also sometime. But for now, we'll say goodbye. See you all next time. You have any comments, questions, definitely send us an email. It's desitheatalks@gmail.com. Share our video, like us, subscribe to it. We have a YouTube channel, Instagram, all Desi Tea Talks. Follow us. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.